The state of Nigeria's economy is once again under the spotlight following a recent report by the Financial Times that has sparked a heated debate. The report, which highlighted the country's dwindling economy, has drawn a response from the present administration, blaming past the government for the current economic woes. Now, this comes after criticism from opposition leaders, including Tinubu, who accused the government of mismanaging the economy. As the blame game continues, Nigerians are left wondering who is responsible for the country's economic predicament. So Steve Nwachukwu, an economist and lead researcher at Steward Asset Management Limited, is joining us via Zoom to delve into this matter, delving into, of course, the facts, the figures, and politics surrounding Nigeria's economy to explore a possible solution to get the country back to a better place. Right now, we have Steve. Good morning, Mr. Steve Nwachukwu. It's good to have you again.
Good morning, Mr. Steve. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, my pleasure. Beautiful morning.
Indeed. All right, Mr. Steve, let's hear from you on, your first reaction when you saw the report of New York Times talking about the same blame game that has been going on. We've seen the President Tinubu's administration blaming the former administration, even though they are from the same political party, and they seem to be, predecessing each other. What is your take on that?
Well, it's shocking. Not only that it's shocking, and it's also shameful to get such kind of response from the presidency in respect to some of these issues that most of us have been highlighting on daily basis. You remember some time ago in your show, I have to really state it that we are all running out of ideas. We are all running out of what to say because of on daily basis we repeatedly repeat the same things. It's just a question of the highlight of the things we have been saying. So it's so shameful that we have to get that response from the villa, having in mind that in one hand, the presidency have been always maintaining, or President Bola Ahmed Tinubu have always maintained this posture that he understands and feels the plights of Nigeria. But this time, because the New York Times is a global oppressed in the global space, they felt, okay, we need to counter whatever narratives that New York Times have come up with. But they come back with these rhetorics of how they received or how they inherited a dead economy and all that. And the question should be, if you actually inherited a dead economy, your job and duty is to revive and revamp that economy, not to bury it. But what we are witness is a constant and consistent attempt to bury Nigerian economy. We have not seen, we have not witnessed, we have not seen any of these very line items that all of us have mentioned that government should pursue, but rather what we have seen is the consistency in some of their policy decisions that suggest they are all mere symbolic announcements. They are just mere symbolic announcements, no concrete, no fundamental, no structural backings, no plan or strategic plans to get out of the woes we are currently in. Like I said earlier, it's quite shameful that we get such kind of response considering the plight of Nigerians as we speak. So we need a better response that is filled with results, response that is filled, like I said earlier, maybe the presidency and the president has been deceiving us. Each time you have a broadcast, a national broadcast, you always highlight and feel the pulse of Nigerians, like we continue to encourage him. Continue to feel our pulse on daily basis, not just only to feel it, keep your hand steady on it and find out how much our breath is.
All right.
So it's quite necessary, but he always gives us that impression that he is. But this time he decides to go contrary to respond to what we have been highlighting that maybe somehow we echoed by the New York Times. So it's quite shameful that we get such kind of response from the villa.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve, for that. I love the part where you say feel our pulse. Maybe you keep your hand there and feel it a bit longer. Now, but let's say, for instance, let's accept that yes, probably the previous administration are to be blamed for some certain things. What are those policies you think the previous administration came up with that is most likely affecting this administration today? Say they are right.
Well, I think it's quite wrong for us to be talking rhetorically. We should leave the past administration and let it be. They've made their mistake and we all condemn them for the mistakes they do. So when we start juxtaposing what the current administration is doing and what the last administration did wrong, it seems like we don't want to get out of the problem. So we should face the reality, point to whatever wrong decisions and ill-informed decisions that this current administration is doing. It's quite obvious that, yes, the past administration goofed. Yes, nobody's disputing that. There are a couple of economic decisions that past president and successive government, not just the past president, successive government since this very Fourth Republic, they have been consistent in doing one or two wrong economic decisions that have kept us perpetually where we are. Take, for instance, let's speak on the issues or the fundamental things that have led us to where we are. The issue of 100% importation of petroleum products. This is what the past and successive administration have failed to do. In the last 30 years, 40 years, we have a very good opportunity to revamp our refineries, at least produce to 60, 70, 80% of our local consumption. But what would we result in? Empowering NNPC to continually import 100% of our fuel consumption, except Dangote that came the other day in the last 3 years to build a world-class refinery. So what have we done in the past successive administration? So not just the Buhari administration that have failed to take one of good policy decisions around the economy, around this very importation of petroleum products. So, like I said, the past administration came and worsened the situation. They took one and major of these very economic decisions that worsened our economy. But this government came on the mantra of renewed hope, to give us a new plight, to give us a new directions. He made good promises. But what are we seeing? Rather, his policy and decisions are exacerbating the current economic conditions Nigerians are passing through. I'm actually speaking only for the average Nigerians who cannot find protein in their meals anymore. Protein is becoming a luxury to some families now. Imagine finding protein in your meal is not a luxury. If you are found eating meat or eating fish or eating chicken or whatever protein in your meal, you are a big man. It's not a luxury. What should be as a necessity? Nigerians cannot find milk and calcium anymore. Nigerians are totally malnourished. So these are the issues. So there is no time to start blaming past and successive administration. You always find areas and places yes, you will always find 2 or 3 things that past and successive administration did wrongly. So it's a question of not dwelling in the past, and let's focus on the future and continue to call on this government to take out of the very economic situation that you have actually worsened the economic situations Nigerians are. Okay, if we have to even judge or just oppose the past administration, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu was reckless and was arbitral in the removal of fuel subsidy. But former President Buhari was so mindful and careful to remove fuel subsidy. He was quite mindful of removing fuel subsidy, and the economy was managed. So I think there's no place to start blaming the past and successive administration. He should face the tax. That is why we handed the mandate to him, to take the right decisions and to govern us well. So what is the New York Times talking about, if we may highlight those things?
Now,
That
talking
is
about the New York
getting
Times, Steve,
federal government
some
agitated.
Nigerians are of the
Okay.
opinion that New York Times just decided to put that out there to, soften the precedent because perhaps there might be some sort of, things that they want, perhaps with the government. Do you have a thought like that?
Pardon, I didn't get you clearly.
All right, I said, speaking on the New York Times, some Nigerians are of the opinion that New York Times is, put this out there just to soften, the hearts of our president because perhaps they might need something to be given as a reward for that sort of defense on this present administration.
Was that a defense on this present administration? No, it wasn't a defense. It wasn't at all. They actually highlighted, like I said, things that we have actually been highlighting and be calling out on this government. Like I said, New York Times, if I may summarize that article, is talking about the malnourishment. It's talking about the impoverishment of Nigerians. It's talking about Nigerians not finding milk, not be able to buy milk, not be able to find cashews, Nigerians finding it difficult to live. New York Times article or report actually highlighted the living conditions crisis Nigerians are passing through, the possibilities of small and medium businesses collapsing in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 months. So that's the highlight of the New York. That was why the response of the Mr. President of Villa was so enormous that they left the substance, they left the fat and started the blame game. Like I said earlier, the time of blame game should end. You inherited a dead economy. Your job is to revive and revamp a dead economy. Your job and work is not to bury it.
Yeah,
Thank
so
you.
let's talk about this, Steve. Earlier, we opened the phone line to talk about a very interesting conversation coming from the Zamfara State Government and Police Command, where there's been a huge allegation saying that they seem to be political leaders in part of the insecurity. They are the part of the insecurity issues affecting Nigerians, and they seem to not have political will. I'm sure you've come across what the governor of Zamfara State has said. What is your take? Do you think this is one of the things that this administration is not really combating and working well when the president made mention that corruption is fighting back, even after he promised to secure the country?
I think it's a growing challenge, and things are getting worse in this administration in their posture of handling national security issues. I must say it. Like I said, it seems that this government strives in propaganda and just symbolic announcements. And there is also a clear indication that there's no functional knowledge to manage our security issues. So whatever be the position of the state governor or the position of the federal government and the people living in those communities that are being ransacked and killed, that are being tortured, that are being faced to live in IDPs in their ancestral homes. Nigerians and people living in Zafara and other troubled areas are becoming fugitives in their own land. So it's quite unfortunate. And it seems like this administration is so silent on issues of securities. The banditries is rising on daily basis, and we are not seeing every functional knowledge to tackle these very issues. And the government should stop, like you said. I think there's some level of politicization or political hands in these very insecurities that we witness in most of these northeast and northwest states, where it's becoming difficult. The politicians are benefiting in these very insecurities and the rest of them. So, but it takes the will and who is decisive, who is also plain to take this. We are talking about human lives. We are talking about the existential threat to Nigerians living in those communities. Like I said earlier, Nigerians have become fugitive in their own land. They can't access their ancestral homes anymore. So what a country are we talking about? And have in mind that the main mandate, the vocal mandate of a government is the welfare and security of the nation. On one hand, they can't find food. On the other hand, they are not secured. So what are we turning to? So we still call on the government, both at the federal and state government. I wouldn't like to run with the narrative of the state government that is totally politicized. He should also step up, whatever it requires to get and nip these very issues on the board. Government needs to start dealing with these very issues because these very insecurities has a ripple effect on our economy. Now, of recent, the World Bank and the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics did a survey and came out with over 135 million Nigerians that are in dimensional poverty. What does that suggest to? It does suggest that the poverty is not just for poverty of lack of food, poverty of lack of education. That's the nature of the dimensional poverty. Poverty of lack of shelter because Nigerians are living in IDPs as a result of these insecurities. Poverty of lack of education because schools has been burnt and destroys their children that live in IDPs cannot access education. Poverty of lack of health care. There's no healthcare facilities because hospitals and the rest of them, the nurses and doctors are running away from those communities. So Nigeria and Nigerian government needs to rise to the occasion and nip these issues. I don't know what we are becoming of. Life is no longer precious in Nigeria. So government of the state and the federal government needs to arrest this situation. Thank you.
Arresting the situation, you made very salient points there. Also, we see farmers being killed, which is also leading to food shortages, which is also in regards to the New York Times talking about malnutrition. We're seeing food shortages. People don't even have the financial power to purchase this food because they are unavailable and they are more expensive and they are out of the reach of most Nigerians. So at this point in time, like you rightly said, there's no point going back and blaming previous administration. There's no point saying, oh, they didn't do this, which is also something we've seen happen year in, year out with every administration. They always blame the previous administration for not doing A, B, and C right, hence making the others suffer. At this point, moving forward, what exactly can be done? What is that thing that can save us at this point in time? Help bring back security, food security to an extent, build the economy, even if it's to a point where, we can see, like you said, let's not bury the country. Even if it's the point where we're taking out the sand from the grave that they're burying the country into. What can we do at this point in time?
Of course, avoidance of repetition. Like I said earlier also, some of us are becoming obese to speak to some of these national issues because on daily basis, we point to 1, 2, 3 things that need to be done. And the essence of saying all this is not to criticize the government. It's not to run down the government. It's actually to help them improve in wherever they are lacking. So what can be done? Let's go back to the drawing board. And I'm very sure they know 1 and 2 things to actually do to make sure that these issues are addressed. We are talking about malnutrition. If you want to deal with the issue of malnutrition, what do? We're just talking about the issues around the banditries in the northeast and northwest. We are talking about high cost of living. We are talking about the high cost of food items. So what leads to malnutrition? Malnutrition comes when you cannot find those necessary minerals and vitamins and the rest of them that will nourish your body as a meal. I earlier alluded to the fact that it's becoming luxury. It's becoming luxury for Nigerians to find proteins in their meals these days. If you can afford to buy milk or whatever brand of milk, so this is how ridiculous Nigerians are becoming, how life is turning on Nigerians. So what can be done? What can be done is to deal with the issues around this insecurity that have thrown away or that have sacked these very farmers, at least the artisanal farmers from their ancestral homes, and making these very food items, crop items so expensive for the poor. What can be done is to address issues around forests, those components of food items that we import, that importers, manufacturers who engage in consumer processing goods can have this very forest in a relative cheaper. If we can get it, the forest market exchange rate around the That will be better. It will reduce the sufferings. What can be done? What can be done is to make sure that government give a marching order to NNPC to end this issue of oil theft. End the issue of oil theft. That is what can be done so that NNPC can ramp up production to somewhere around 2 million, 1.9 million barrels per day, so that you can have enough proceed from the sales of crude to support your exchange market and reduce this very aggressive falling rate of naira on daily basis. What can be done? What can be done is for government to start understanding that this is not the time for luxury living, spending billions and trillions of naira to service themselves. What can be done? What can be done is to be prudent and efficient in management of our national resources. What can be done? What can be done is to live in rhetoric and propaganda and face realities that Nigerians are passing through. There is nothing else you can do. I have not seen, since my years in this very field of economy, I have not seen any of the economic tools that can be replaced with any of the propagandist methods. I have not seen, no matter how the propagandists or no matter how the rhetorics and stories sounds like, it cannot replace any of these very economic tools that support the 5 pillars of the economy, or that supports the 5 pillars of economy, which stands at the employment rate, the your trade, your GDP, your what else. So I can't find any of those propagandist tools that can replace any of these economic tools. So government needs to brace up and live to the reality. So like I said, a lot needs to be done by government, but start with prudence, efficiency in management of these mega resources. We are hearing the issues around budgeting for private jets, where there are millions of Nigerians going hungry. So what can government do? There should be some level of intervention. As it stands now, Nigeria needs an urgent attention that requires a critical look at how Nigerians are feeling. If it requires Nigeria government reducing or subsidizing food items, they need to do it. Nigerians need to survive first to see the brighter future you are talking about tomorrow. This money-centric style of government needs to end. You can't be gathering resources just for frivolous capital projects and the rest of them. Yes, it's good to rally funds around government to embark on huge capital projects, but also look at the current situation of Nigerians. They need to live today to see those bridges, to see those airports, to see those infrastructures that you want to build. Nigerians need to live to see it, not when they are dead.
At the end of
Thank
the day,
you.
Mr. Steve, it's all about looking at the long run. You know, the future of Nigeria needs to be clear right from day one. So we're hoping the necessary stakeholders take the bull by the horn, because it seemed to be taking a bit longer to kickstart this journey. Thank you so much, Steve Nwachukwu, for joining us to dissect this situation. Appreciate your time this morning.